Welcome to part 2. Ruffles, because we're going to be cutting a hole out of that to go on the curtain rod. So again, it's not going to be able to fray more than that square, and the integrity of the entire window valance door divider, ragtag, boho, shabby chic, is going to be intact. Okay, so now we are going to drop down and do our stitching approximately 4 fingers down from where our first secure line was. And we're going to sew all the way across the 7.5 feet, pivot, pull our foot up, needle down, pivot, and come right back the whole length to reinforce it. Okay, so now it's time to audition what I want to put on the top of the burlap for the decoration. And again, not the top, but the very bottom of the burlap, which will be still on the very top of our valance. This I purchased at Hobby Lobby. It's normally $7.99 per yard. However, I got it on clearance. I think this was the second or third clearance they've gone through for $6.72 for the entire bolt. And again, it's not the entire bolt. It's just very little whatever is left on it. But again, looking at this, I'm really hoping I have enough to cross it. We're only looking at 7.5 feet, so I'm sure I do. Let's go ahead and measure it out and see how it will look on the edge, and I'll show you that momentarily. Okay, so I'm just starting to lay this out, and I am actually loving this more than I thought I would. We have our top sewn. We've got our square where our peg's going to come through to stop the rest from fraying. Then we have our line that our rod is going to go through, approximately 4 fingers wide. And now I'm trying out the trim. I think I'm only going to put it on one edge. Whatever edge you decide is the front of this is where I'm going to put it. We may end up putting it on the back. But again, it depends upon how much I have, and again, how much you want on it to show in both rooms. So let's go ahead and measure this out and get this sewn on. I'm going to do a zigzag stitch. I'm considering a zigzag stitch on the very bottom line and the very top, but I'll let you know what I decide when we get to the sewing machine. And instead of working on my normal table today, I am on the cutting board just for convenient purposes with the renovations going on right now. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the main considerations when we start to sew this on is getting the edge from fraying, plus you see these things overlap, so I actually have 2 of them on both sides, either side I would do, that I'm going to have to sew on those threads into the fabric so I do not lose them or have them dangling down, because I think it's going to be a much more complete look when I have these dangles, all, if they would cooperate, all tucked in to where they don't show. So we're going to go ahead and zigzag over these a couple of times right at the edge, right underneath the beginning of this fray on the end. Not fray, but you know, the little boho burlap covering. And we have moved the back of this. Instead of being both pieces down, we've pulled the one side back, so we're only going to sew on one side, leaving that open, because we're still going to put the fabric inside of that and sew across. All right, here we go. Okay, so when we're sewing, we want to make sure that our beads are out the right direction, that our ribbon and lace is over the burlap at the perfect angle, that our second layer of burlap underneath is not up here in our way, and we want to go ahead and go slow because these are going to want to bobble, and our length of our cording and our weight of our burlap is going to want to pull, torque, and pull it out of the way. So we want to go very slow, very gentle as we sew all these together. And we've just gone through our second bobbin. So again, it's taking a lot of thread because we really want that reinforced at each place that we're doing it. So let's go ahead and run another bobbin. The reason we want to go real slow is because, see this right here? This pin holds the foot onto the sewing machine. See these right here? They're really hard. So you don't want to jazz up the machine by going over these wooden beads that are covered in the fabric. So we want to go real slow. And again, the weight of these, the weight of the burlap, the length of them all, we have to constantly keep maneuvering to pull them out. Don't get frustrated. Go slow. This is a work of art, and it's something I love to do. Very nice. Here we go. Okay, so now we have the beads. Now we're going to get the fabric and audition it for going inside. I'm loving it. Okay, so here we go. We've already decided we're going to have some of the lace. We've already decided we're going to use the bolt of fabric that I have that's this color. Now I'm wondering, with the ribbons that we want to use and the lace, do I go more pinks? I've got a yard of fabric. I found a couple of these. This one seems like it matches the best. That was just $6.99 for 1 yard. And then I have some different pieces left over from previous projects. But problem being is that I know I'm going to need approximately 15 yards. Ooh, that sounds like so much. 15 yards to make this project. So I'm thinking just throwing in a little bit of the darker. This looks like it was a brownie. I think that's off of some Aprons and Dignity bibs. And then these fabrics mainly off of Aprons and Dignity bibs. And this might have been the backing for a quilt or two that I've done. So I've got the little darker pieces of pink along with some really small. I'm wondering if I can use those to tie in other pieces. And these a little thinner than I'd like. But to use all these, I'm actually thinking I was leaning towards either going all pink and beige or all yellow and beige. I think I had a pretty green flower in here too. Let me see if I can find that. I really thought I did. Oh yes, right down here at the bottom of the pile. This, I stole this out of my mother's cupboard, fabric cupboard, so don't tell her, shh. But I am in love with this. So this feels like it is about 1 yard left. So I think this is 100% cotton. All of this pieces that I have in front of me are quilter's cotton, except for, of course, the laces that we're looking at. But I'm thinking I'm going to mix the pinks, the yellows, with just a little bit of the green that shows through on this with some of the darker beiges. And I really want to see if the burlap and the beads, what do you think? Will that go with everything? I'm thinking the pink, the green. I've got a couple of the smaller pieces of this that I think will really just make the yellows pop. Some of the darker pink that I just showed, I think will make the pinks pop. Some of this. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But right now, what I've got to come up with is enough pieces to go ahead and do 3 lengths of the entire 7.5 foot long boho curtain shabby chic valance for the door, and then we'll tie all the other pieces in to make it fit. So we're going to use a combination of these to physically sew into this to then start our tying process. And again, I wanted 3 layers sewn in. So I'm going to lay those out. We'll come back in a moment, see how that looks. Okay, so I'm taking my larger scraps and I'm tearing them down into smaller sections that is still more or less square. So we have the pinks, the browns, the yellow and green all going into a pile, and then I'm going to pick 3 of them up at a time, all different sizes, and we're going to get going and sewing them into the overall door divider piecemeal, so that we can tie them in different lengths and different sizes, just have some color pop here and there. Okay, so I have a pile of torn smaller pieces that I'm going to start sewing into the Shabby Chic room divider, and I've got a whole stack of fabrics that I have yet to trim up and cut up. But again, right now all I'm doing is getting it started to then make the ties going down to make my 6 or 7 foot length. Okay, so back in my lap it goes, back to the sewing machine, and we are going to start our exciting journey of putting fabric in the middle. And again, we're doing 3 layers, so bear with me and we will get them laid out for you, and we'll start sewing them in. What I have done is I've opened it up. The beaded part is going to the back. I'm back against the bulk of the fabric here. Now I'm going to put 3 layers and I'm going to start coming forward. Now, one thing about boho valances, as you know, my window curtain valances are usually batik fabric, because on batik fabrics it's the same color on both sides. So like you see on this, it is not batik fabric. So we are going to have different colors showing through on the door, but if we lay these out, see how one is, excuse me, sorry about that, lighter, and one is darker, and one is lighter, like a whitish, and one is yellow. That's the front and that's the back of the fabric. This fabric up here I chose, as well as the burlap, is the same on both sides, so it doesn't matter. But we are going to have some of that show through, because on this, since I need 15 yards, 15 times $15 a yard would get extremely expensive if we use batik fabrics. So that is why I'm going with a more collection of fabrics. Plus I want this one being really, really shabby chic. So that is why we are going with this more than the hippie colors that I tend to do brighter. Our next one, I promise you, let's go play with some darks and brights. But this one, I wanted more of the earth tones in it. But as you see, we've got a lot of pop and a lot of color that we're going to be adding into that. So here we go. We're going to lay them out. Now, see how we've put one solid piece in the back, and now I've put a couple of scrap pieces here of differing lengths, and then I'm going to put this piece that looks to be about 4, maybe 4.5 inches. We're going to put that in and start sewing it, and then I need one more layer on top, because this is 1 and then 2 going across here. So we'll put one more layer, and then we'll start sewing it to secure it in. We're going to sew it all the way across with the fabric 7.5 feet. Then we're going to close this up and sew again to reinforce all those and lock them in. Another 7.5 feet stitch all the way across. Okay, let me get one more layer up there, and we'll do a couple of stitches and come back and add more. Okay, so once again, we are taking 1, 2, and 3 minimal pieces. That's actually 4, poking its head through there, across and sewing them down. And then we're going to come back and do it over again. But again, we've got 7.5 foot long to go ahead and keep adding the fabrics to create our door room divider. I just wanted to back up and share with you for a second what I'm doing to connect these at least 3 fabrics at the same time in the boho valance, so the top will be covered up. But look at this mess that I'm making. And again, all of these will be ripped up, and it's going to be glorifyingly beautiful shabby chic when we're done. But again, this is a lot to manage at one time. And here we go. And as you sew, just make sure you're continuing to have at least 3 layers on top of your burlap, and you're tucking them into the very top of that seam there as you go. And you can see we're adding all different kind of fabrics and ribbons and laces to make our valance. And as you go, make sure you keep throwing the bulk through your machine to the other side so it doesn't become oppressive on this side of the machine as we sew. And we'll trim these extra pieces. I just didn't want to sew points in there. I wanted to have more of the bulk, and we're going to go back over this and sew it twice to make sure it is extremely secure. And keep overlapping all of your fabrics. You'll sew an inch or two, stop, grab some more of your scrap fabrics and put them on so that we're always having at least 3 layers before we sew. And just keep building up 3 layers at a time. You can only do about 3 or 6 inches, and then you want to stop again, put your needle down, and get more fabric, build up to at least 3 layers, and keep going. And we're going to keep layering. Down. And when we grab our pieces and they're too long, what I'm doing is I'm snipping the top and then I'm tearing it down, and I'm doing all of my pieces varying lengths from probably 6 inches is the shortest to 7 feet is my longest, and I do believe I have a couple of 7-footers. So again, it depends upon what you have to how you sew it in, but we're tearing it, and I'm tearing it anywhere from 1 inch to 3 inch. I want a lot of variation, a lot of variegated colors in my pinks, my browns, my beiges, and my off-whites, everything combining there pretty like that yellow flower with the green to have it just a little more subdued and natural. So here we go, we're ripping some more. And it is okay to go ahead and sew over and then backstitch to lock in some of those pieces that might get away with you or that you haven't put the 3 layers on. And remember to keep layering all the colors that you want in your boho valance. You want to have them mixed throughout the entire quilt. So you want to mix the pinks, the yellows, the beiges, and keep that going. And we're coming right up to the end where we have finished that sewing, and then it goes into the edge pieces. So what we want to do